Every woman needs to take that universal path to find self-worth, a voice, and a cherished life. That path is the heroine's journey, the roadmap to an amazing adventure that women travel to discover their true selves. The heroine's journey is not about getting on your superpowers and going out to fight the lions, tigers, and bears of the outside world with your might. That would be the hero's journey. This woman's journey is the internal journey that a woman takes to grow her courage and strength and travel to her best life.
Hey, how you doing this Friday?
I'm doing very well. It's always so much fun to chat with you. When Friday comes around, I just look forward to it.
I know, and our conversations can go in so many different directions, which is what I love.
Me too. We have amazing conversations. And while we come from different points of view and we come from different, different ages,
Hmm.
we have really been able to share and understand a wide range of things.
Yeah. Well, it feels like, not to kind of get ahead of ourselves here, but it feels like because we're both on our own heroine's journey. And so like the intersections of those things,
Uh-huh.
um, or the crossover, I should say, of those, your journey and my journey, and probably everybody's journey who's listening,
Mhm.
um, is astounding, you know,
Right.
no matter how different.
Yes, because we know it's a universal journey with the same plot line. That's what fascinates me. The plot line's the same. We've heard women tell stories over and over about this is my story, that's my story.
Yeah.
Even the author that I so admire, Liz Gilbert, who tells her story. Well, her story is just a heroine's journey. And it's amazing to me that up until now, nobody's really identified the steps of the heroine's journey because the plot line is the same, and we can know so much just through the plot line.
Yeah. Speaking of Liz Gilbert, and this is just a random thing. I was literally talking to a friend this week, and she was saying that she was going back and re-listening to Eat, Pray, Love, and particularly the pray part over
Uh-huh.
and over and over again because she's on her own heroine's journey, and that part of Liz Gilbert's journey really resonated with her, and she really wanted to grab onto it.
Uh-huh. And so much of what she wrote has really resonated. It's why I think she's the number one women's author. Because and she writes a beautiful foreword in for Eat, Pray, Love 10 years later, where she says, I think so many women were attracted to my story and my book because the message is own your own life.
Yeah.
And she said, I think that's a new one. She said, I don't think women have heard that. And it just resonated so strongly. And it's a piece of what we're going to talk about today,
Yeah.
that part of owning your own life. I have been fascinated lately by this concept of how culture sees the hero and how culture sees the heroine. And I thought we might talk a little bit about that today because, when, and just as an aside, when I went to work, and maybe for you too, I looked around and I said, what is the success model? And when I asked that question, I was like, it's the man model. So
Hmm.
I will, particularly back in the days when I went to work, I will try to look like a man when I go to work. I will wear these big, heavy worsted wool suits with an Oxford shirt underneath it. I never wore the tie thing, but I did do all the rest of it until I have to tell you a funny story. The treasurer of Philadelphia, or I shouldn't even say the name of the city, but the treasurer was such a philanderer. He was such a latch that I came walking down the street and he said to me one day, Joan, you look perfectly dowdy because I had that man suit on with Oxford shirt and, and all that. And I looked up and I said to him, you know what? Coming from you, that's a compliment. But nevertheless, I did try to early on when I went to work on Wall Street, I tried to play the man role so that I could look like the man and be accepted in a culture that up until then hadn't accepted me. And by the way, even at that point, didn't want me.
Yeah.
So, but now we have the freedom to start to say, well, how are we different? What is different? And I think when we look to the culture and how it has viewed heroines and heroes, I think that we can learn something about that. And then, as you and I were talking earlier, let's kind of talk about that part. And then let's ask ourselves, has anything changed? You know?
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting. Like you bring up the heroine, and I know that the word heroine has existed for a very long time, but I don't think that people actually thought of the heroine having a journey outside of the hero's
Uh-huh.
journey.
Exactly. I think you're absolutely right about that.
They just, it was the feminine version of the masculine, basically.
Exactly. And another funny story along those lines of how I would dress. One guy said to me, "But you wear really sexy underwear." And I'm like, "How do you know that?" You know, but he did point out an interesting point, and that's that while I was trying to man dress it on the outside, I still was feminine on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I
Yeah.
was trying to cover it up and have it not be for the purposes of keeping my job, you know, not being too noticed, nevertheless, there was this part of me that was still alive and very much feminine.
But it had to be under the mantle, under the covers of fitting into the masculine world, fitting into the expectation.
Right. And I think while there may be some relief from that now, because obviously you don't see women wearing ties and bow ties like they did in that era. Um, I don't think it's completely gone away. Do you?
No, I think that it's being more acknowledged,
Uh-huh.
but I still think that there it is so this idea, this concept has been so strongly held that the fight is trying to kind of separate the two things
Uh-huh.
and both separate, I guess, and then allow them to be equal, which is the second fight with anything.
Exactly. So how would you describe, let's pick out some elements that describe the difference in culture between the heroine and the hero.
Okay.
Do you have
Um, I would say that the hero or most heroes
uh-huh.
that we see like represented on film, TV, and that kind of stuff, particularly, they carry some sort of weapon, whether
Yeah.
that's a gun or a lead pipe or a fist or like whatever. But they have a weapon of some sort that they are going to use.
Uh-huh. And they're going to wield it with power.
Yes.
And if they're successful at smacking down the enemy, then they're called a hero.
Yes. Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
And the 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 weapon of choice is part of what transfers to them their power, their authority, their
Dominance.
yeah, yeah, their dominance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, and because you think about the heroes' stories that go from where you go from somebody who doesn't have their weapon to gaining their
Uh-huh.
weapon.
Uh-huh. And
Um,
it's the Jedi, it's the cowboy, um it's all the way across the board.
yeah, and to some extent, the weapon of choice gives them confidence.
Uh-huh. So does the heroine come with a weapon, do you think?
I don't think so. Or the weapon
No.
is a different type of weapon. It's more internal. It's more confident internally
Uh-huh.
that radiates outward as opposed to a physical something um, that you wield.
Yes, I would say the hero has a weapon and he plans to use it. The heroine is never thought to have a weapon. What she is thought to have is internal strength. And I think the women that we can point to that I say are heroines, and there's not enough mythology or stories or anything else written about the heroine to be able to really do an examination of the heroine. But the heroines that I think of, whether it's Eleanor Roosevelt or, even Marilyn Monroe or you know, Liz Gilbert. You
Hmm.
know, they don't come wielding a weapon planning to smack somebody, broadside with it. They
Yeah.
come they come with a sense of groundedness and internal strength that we recognize.
It's so interesting that you use Marilyn Monroe. I love Marilyn Monroe, but Marilyn Monroe, the characterization of Marilyn Monroe forever has been the victimization,
Uh-huh.
of the men in her life or the directors or the situation or the that kind of stuff. And so to think of her as a heroine is,
Uh-huh.
well, for me at least, kind of awesome.
Well, certainly when she walked in the room, she owned the whole room.
Yeah.
And that is because, as we're saying, a heroine comes with internal might. So that's why I would call her a heroine, because she has that internal might, whereas a hero has the external might that
Yeah.
we might think of. And I think I'm going to say this clearly right up front, and that's that I think our culture has disenfranchised us from our internal might
Oh,
to try
100%.
to not make us heroines, but rather victims.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I hate to put it this way, but you're easier to control.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. They try to control us in mass, or as we are controlled in mass, or even in corporations or families or whatever. Disenfranchise us from our internal might is very helpful from someone else's point of view, not from my point of view.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. What would you say is another characteristic of the hero versus the heroine?
oh gosh, this one, I gotta tell you, this one almost makes me mad.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah, because a hero always comes with a name,
oh God, yes.
but a heroine rarely has a name associated with her. That's why you and I have, like, you know, kind of gone back through the history of women to pick out some heroines.
Hmm.
Because in general, a guy, Luke, or they come with names. They build statues. They're represented for a legacy of time. Whereas a heroine has no name. She's usually nameless and part of
Yeah.
a group being like the nurses from World War II, or something that had some good, or did something associated with that group, but a single woman isn't pointed out, and she has no name.
Particularly if you look back in history, like I think as we talked about earlier, it's getting better. You're starting to see more individual women show up as
Uh,
themselves. But certainly backwards in history, finding women um, who have their own name, and even to the extent of um, their truly their own name and not like a married name, like Mrs.
yeah, right.
Whatever.
Mrs. Roosevelt.
Luckily, she was a Roosevelt on both sides, I think. So she really did stick with her name.
Exactly, exactly. And as part of that, I think we can go a step further and say that a man achieves legacy status as a hero, but it's rarely seen that what a woman did is has a legacy. It's one of the things that we've been saying in the heroine's journey is create your legacy. For me, my new book that's out, oh, I'm so excited
Woo!
about it. Woohoo. That's legacy.
Yeah.
Okay. That is a body of knowledge that I've worked on for 10 years now, the heroine's journey, as we're talking about it here. And I'm so proud of it because it's legacy. And it's time for women to be known for establishing some things that move society forward or culture forward or anything else like that, not as a group, but with a singular name that does denote their legacy. You
Yeah.
know, we've seen legacy in men. I mean, you and I can quickly name off the top of our heads many men. You
Yep.
know, whether it's generals who come in with their sword or their guns, or it's, you know,
Bankers.
champions of bankers, or whether it's champions of industry, or, you know, we know them by name and we know them by legacy.
Hmm.
And how is it that women have gotten that left out of name and legacy?
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, and this is maybe an aside to that, but the when they talk about like small loans, the most valuable way that you can give a small loan is to a woman, because the woman will lift generally herself up as well as her family as well as her community,
Uh-huh.
as opposed to it being a loan that lifts only me up.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. But we still, for some reason, glorify that legacy over glorifying the legacy that a woman might conceive.
Yeah.
And that's a really distinct thing, I think, that still goes on in our society.
Oh, totally.
We can make small contributions, maybe only in the home. I'm being a bit facetious, but when it comes to really the worldwide, Golda Meir kind of
Hmm.
contributions, that is not what we typically expect from women.
Yeah. And the women who get there uh, have had an unbelievable struggle to achieve that.
Uh-huh. Right. And our notoriety is just not enduring.
Yeah.
I think that's one. I think that's one of the things we need to work on.
Yeah. Well, and I think that like it certainly helps now as women are starting to feel their power. They're starting to
Uh-huh.
celebrate each other.
Uh-huh.
That definitely helps. Because if you think about it, for a long time, and I hate to say this, but for a long time, women were helping to not help.
Isn't that the truth? Where did that come from? You know?
Brainwashing?
What, yeah, well, I think it's what you said earlier, and that's that there has been an attempt to keep us separate
Hmm.
because we're more controllable. um, we're more
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
than if we stand so strongly in our own self-power and we recognize the self-power in other women.
One of the things that I think also lends to that is, and I don't know why, and maybe it is part of the heroine's journey as well, and part of the evolution that we're seeing with women right now. Um, Women also seem to have a tendency to come from a point of view of scarcity.
Isn't that
There's
true?
one job, there's one something, there's only one
Uh-huh.
job, there's only one possible husband or partner, or there's only one, I don't know,
Uh-huh.
kind of a thing. There's only one house
Uh-huh.
or whatever, which also works to separate.
My first book was called A Girl Needs Cash, and when I talked about that and money in front of large groups of women, which I did, one of the things I always used to say, Erin, is that women see money like a lake and men see money like a river.
Ooh, go into that a little bit more.
And it's kind of what you just said. Okay. Women see money as it's a confined amount, and they better be careful with it because it's a lake. Whereas men see more money coming towards them
Ah,
as a river, or as you were just saying a minute ago, more opportunity coming their way. And
yeah.
again, where did we pick that up? because one of the things we say in the heroine's journey is as your self-worth rises, you'll see that there are many more options for you than you ever thought there were. But if we see it only like a lake, in other words, it's not going to
Finite.
get any new water, it's finite, versus we see it like a river where more and more and more is coming our way that we're going to be able to participate in and enjoy. That's a completely different mindset.
I love that visual of the idea, the concept. I think I'm going to steal that from you, Joan.
You can, and it's one that I really implemented in my own life because I did something for employment and for cash income for a period of my life, and then all of a sudden that particular opportunity ended, and I could just sit on the floor and say that was it for me, or I could be the heroine, get up, put my wings on, and fly into the unknown because I was going to do something completely different. It wasn't the same thing at all. And the only way that my heroine's journey was going to proceed is if I got up and flew.
Yeah. It's interesting that this has come up right now, actually, for me, because I have been thinking about the work that I do, and I am an accountant. I'm a production accountant. And I've been trying to, like, I feel like for my entire career, I've been trying to get out of that and trying to raise myself above just being the accountant. Um, and
Uh-huh.
I want to say it was literally in this past week, I was just kind of like almost resigned to my fate, so to speak. I was just kind of like I'm too old now. Like that opportunity has passed me by. I am what I am. It's just,
Mhm.
try to go in and earn the money, save the money, and then think about the next chapter outside of production and accounting and on that kind of stuff
Uh-huh.
in 10 years
Uh-huh. Well,
versus what you were
let
just
me
saying.
give you a let me give you a visual. You cannot fly. You cannot get out of the box if you can't fly.
Yep.
Because you can't walk out of the box. So
Nope.
the only way is to fly, which has to mean that you think there are other options. And I'm going to tell you a little secret in here. The directions are on the outside of the box.
So
The
you need to,
directions are on the outside of the box. You got to get out of the box to
so
be able
you,
to see the direction.
yeah, so you need to get out of the box, or, and this is where I think the heroine's journey also comes in, you need somebody to come by and read the
Uh-huh.
directions for you so that you can get out of the box. But again, that talks about being collaborative.
Uh-huh. And certainly on the heroine's journey, that's one of the things we talk about is people. Because sometimes you just do need a kick in the butt from somebody else, because they can see things that you can't see.
Yeah, we're way too
And
close
that,
to the story.
yeah, exactly. And that's why we're encouraging as we look at the differences between men who learn to play sports, learn to play football, learn to collaborate, you know, and perhaps women that didn't have that same kind of cultural upbringing. I know I was very athletic in sports, but I played sports that were singular. I was a
Mm,
diver. I was a competitive diver. You
yeah.
know, I did those things that were mostly not collaborative. But I've certainly learned later in life, oh my gosh, life is so much better on the heroine's journey when you collaborate. It's more fun.
Well, that also brings up a really interesting thing because more and more women and girls are getting into activities, into sports, soccer and basketball and lacrosse and swimming and diving and tennis and all of those things. Like the women athletes, that the concept of it is growing. But I do wonder, like, I have to admit, and I'm sure that you would probably agree with me, that being an athlete definitely gave you certain skills, life skills, mental skills, that kind of stuff. But there is an aspect of that kind of competition that is very much in the hero's journey?
I was going to say, I think we should do a whole podcast on this because I learned to be stronger on the outside. And then as I got down the road in my life, what I realized is that I did not have the internal strength that I needed. I looked strong on the outside and I was Illinois State diving champion. But when it came to the situations where I needed the fortitude of the internal strength in me, I didn't have it. And I would say that's another difference between a hero and a heroine, is that a hero takes an external journey, builds his strength, goes out, fights the lions, tigers, and bears, comes home with the bacon, and is acclaimed the hero. Okay? That, as we point out in the heroine's journey, let's have a drum roll for that one. As we point out in the heroine's journey, our journey, our journey as the heroine is an internal journey. Our journey is not to build our external strength, it's to build our internal strength. It's to claim our self-worth and our voice. And that is a huge difference between a heroine and a heroine. Would you agree?
100%. I think that finding and building your voice, building your security in your voice, not to steal, I think, from MasterCard, but is priceless.
Yeah, and what I can tell you, there's a time in my life where I actually felt like there was something wrong with me when I took up airspace.
Totally. 100%.
Like I was not privileged. I was not, and I'm talking about, I've got an MBA. Like I was an intelligent, well-educated woman who was in the normal workspace, but I had this subconscious belief that I had to be really careful not to use up too much airspace. I was conscious of limiting myself in that airspace, conscious of limiting my voice. Like I just didn't have the privilege or the right for some reason that I would probably tell you had something to do with being feminine.
Yeah. Well, because I know that at one point you, I think, owned your own brokerage, right?
I did.
How did that manifest itself when you are the owner?
I hate to tell you this because it's really vulnerable. I played two games. When it was women around or when I was in my power. I'm not even going to call my feminine power. I'm just going to say when I was attempting to play the role of the masculine in the business world, I when I needed to, I could speak up. But what I discovered about myself is that as soon as you put me in the more feminine role, there were men around, I played a completely different game. I was not authentic.
Yeah.
Because I was hearing rules and culture, or my father, I don't know what you can call it, but I was hearing something in my head that said, you don't have the legitimate right to use your voice.
Well, and I would also there is the programming that has happened to you for years and years and years. But my guess would be as well that in the environment that you were in that moment, or normally through the course of your business, that programming was getting reinforced.
Yeah. Yes, because, and what we talk about in the heroine's journey steps is that all these messages that come to us, sometimes we're not even conscious of them.
Those are the ones that kill you.
Exactly. Sometimes they pop up and you do something because you subconsciously heard it, but you maybe didn't hear it well enough to edit it out of what was going on. But you took it on as a tactic, and your actions, your strategies, everything were changed as a result of it.
Yeah. I have a little story for you that's kind of in that I was at a meeting And there were a group of men, there were some women of my age, and then there were some younger women also in this meeting. Something was said by one of the guys in the room, right? Me and my fellow executives, so we're of about the same age, neither one of us remember or even felt that the comment was so outrageous to even have like striked our brain at all. Just kept on moving. The younger women, it wasn't just one, there were a couple of them. The younger women after that meeting were like, how could he say that? Like, how could you just like let that go? Like, that was so X, Y, and Z. And I was just like, and I looked at my friend and I'm just like, do you know what they're talking about? And she's like, I don't know. Because it was so like normal for us that it just went right on by.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what you and I hope for. That's why we're doing this work, is that we do hope that women awaken to their self-worth and their voice. You
Yeah.
know, you can say it as long as you say it kindly. And please don't diminish my self-worth in the process, because that's what we hope for on the heroine's journey. And bless those younger women, you know, they had some feeling that it either impacted your self-worth or your voice, and they wanted to awaken you to that.
100%. I think that was one of the moments that really had me start to step back from the things that I unconsciously didn't even register, or consciously, I should say, didn't even register, and really take a moment to think about what was actually being said and or communicated, whether that was verbal or nonverbal, and really think about it. Because
I hate to say this, but my father diminished me. I learned to accept that and lived with it because I didn't have any means to get around it as a younger child, you know, but I was clearly less than. And that becomes normal. It takes an awakening before you start to go, no, wait, no, pop, you know, halt.
Yeah, and that is the unconscious programming that is the hardest to recognize and work on.
And it's also very much a part of, because the heroine claims her self-worth and she develops this inner strength that we're talking about. And your inner strength should not take a bunch of hits.
Well, I think that your inner strength is actually strength when it can take hits and not be diminished or not be knocked over.
Well, that's what you would say too, is that we say the hero goes out and he fights for a prize.
Yeah.
The hero is always defined by coming back with the bacon or the, you know, the planet or the spaceship or the just something, you know, that signifies his being a hero. But there's no such thing for a heroine. She isn't called better or faster or stronger because she comes back with, you know, the prize from some far land. The heroine, on the other hand, her heroine duties lie in claiming her self-worth. And that's just what you were saying, is that as your self-worth strengthens, then you are able to know when someone is off base. You're able to stand strongly on your own 2 feet. You're able to defend it. In other words, ours is an internal journey where developing that sense of self-worth, that sense of, you know, I'm just fine the way I am, you know?
Yeah.
And by the way, when we start to do that, have you noticed this? I used to run around in circles trying to be something that, you know, was more perfect than the past.
Yeah.
As I've come to believe in my own heart and tell myself regularly, I am just fine the way I am, you know, and I'm claiming my self-worth and my voice. first of all, I can listen to that stuff a lot less. It doesn't impact me the same way it used to be because it used to send me running around in circles. It doesn't
Yeah.
do that to me anymore. Now I kind of quietly think, I think you don't know all of me. I
Yeah.
think you're making a snap judgment in this moment when you're probably in a bad mood because somebody said something bad to you, and that is just the wrong time for me to take your opinion of me.
Yeah. Well, and taking somebody else's opinion of you like that in like those situations and stuff, the whole point of it is to diminish you, to shrink you.
Uh-huh. That's right.
Um,
Uh-huh. And let's be honest, that's been the life of a woman.
yeah.
I don't care whether you're the most beautiful woman on the planet, that still doesn't claim your self-worth. It still doesn't get you by all these assaults that we regularly take, to be less than as women. And I don't know about you, but I think we have a planet now that needs women to speak up with their voices.
Yeah. Really, really speak up and take, I hate to use control because that is such a hero masculine thing,
Uh-huh.
but um but definitely put hands on the steering wheel and start to
Yeah.
guide.
Yeah, to the point that our voice, we make our voice heard
Yeah.
because we come from a different point of view. I don't want to diminish or change or have any real comment on the hero and who the hero should be. The hero is the hero. He goes out, he fights the battle, he brings home the bacon. That's the hero. The comment I have is on heroines. And that's how we develop our own self strength and how we claim our self worth and how we use our voice. Because I think we need both sides.
Totally.
We just think about things differently.
Mm-hmm. But not to sum it all up, but I think the fight is to be valued as equally as
As the,
the or found as valuable as the
uh-huh.
hero's journey.
And when we have internal strength, like you did not mess with Eleanor Roosevelt. Nobody did. As we develop this internal strength, we don't have to fight the fight. There's nothing stronger than a woman who stands in her strength. We don't have
Yeah.
to go out and fight the fight. We just have to be the fight.
Yeah. This is a funny aside, but have you seen the simulators? They're like electrodes that you put on your stomach, or do you have guys put on their stomach to simulate a period cramp?
No.
You have it. Oh, they're
Uh-uh.
hysterical. But it goes to show you, like it goes to back to the strength thing. Women
Uh-huh.
are walking around every day feeling those things and somehow
And
living
still
their
doing it.
lives.
Yeah, exactly. So do you think as to the heroine and the heroine that has anything changed for women in how we're seen in the culture? You mentioned
I
younger women you thought had more awareness,
Yeah,
you know? Is it actually improving or are we pretty much carrying on where we are?
I think it is improving. I think that
Uh-huh.
you are starting to see women as their own distinct person.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I definitely celebrate that. I love that.
Uh-huh.
We're starting to see more women supporting women, which is
Uh-huh.
amazing. Um,
Uh-huh.
but it is still a struggle. We are still in that struggle to be valued
Uh-huh.
equally.
Uh-huh. And all the heroine's journey is our passion. And our
Yes.
passion is that's the path for a woman to her joy, prosperity, and freedom. We claim it's not going out and fighting the lions, tigers, and bears that brings a woman to her best self. It's this internal journey, and it's the internal journey of claiming your self-worth and your voice. So we love it that you're here with us on the podcast. We're going to have so much more conversation around this. I think that we should do a podcast on women in sports sometime soon,
Definitely.
which is definitely right in your wheelhouse. And that we'll just have so many interesting conversations about a woman and her ability to claim her strength, walk through all 13 steps of the heroine's journey. My book is out now. Oh my gosh, that's a heroine's job in itself. It was more like writing a doctoral thesis, I think.
Well, you were writing and living it.
Yeah,
you were writing and living it.
I was going through the heroine's journey at the same time that I was trained. And, as I look around, I see so many other women. Drew Barrymore was definitely in the middle of her heroine's journey, as are many other women that we see, because it's a universal journey. So we have so much to talk about. We love it that you're here with us. Please go to our Facebook group and make a comment. Make a comment on YouTube as well. And most importantly, go to Amazon, download the ebook, which will be 99 cents for the next 2 weeks. Please download the ebook and write a review for us, because we'd love to hear from you.
Can you remind people what the name of the book is?
Oh, certainly. The book is The Heroine's Journey, The Art of Becoming the Heroine of Your Own Life.
Perfect. Thank you for this wonderful, amazing conversation.
Yeah, it was. It really was. Thank you.
That is this week's episode of The Heroine's Journey. You can access the blog post for this episode, along with other great resources, at walkthejourney.com. Also, get your free ebook at walkthejourney.com so you can say goodbye to just surviving and turn into thriving. Join us next week for another fun, inspiring, and uplifting episode. If you love this episode, feel free to subscribe and give us a review on iTunes. Stay in touch on other social media platforms, Instagram and our Facebook group, both at The Heroine's Journey LLC. Until next time.